Nothing provides more of a contrast between the two major parties than their platforms. Now, what a platform is every 4 years the parties get together and they draft up basically a roadmap of where they want to take America. And joining me now to talk about the Republican Party platform is Senator Marsha Blackburn. She was elected to the United States Senate back in 2018 after serving in the House of Representatives. She was in the 7th Congressional District of Tennessee. She is the author of a recently released book, The Mind of a Conservative Woman, Seeking the Best for Family and Country. Marsha, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Well, it's good to have you with us here for the Values Voter Summit. And then Congressman Mike Johnson of my home state of Louisiana. Mike and I go all the way back to when he was in law school. He not only serves as the congressman for the 4th District?
4th District.
But he is also the chairman of the Republican Study Committee. And before entering Congress, he was a constitutional attorney, still is, but defended religious freedom around the country. So Mike, welcome.
Glad to be here.
Marsha, I want to start with you. When you look at the Republican Party platform, and by the way, in 2012, you were the co-chair
Correct.
of the platform committee. I was a delegate to the
That's
committee.
right.
We got to work together on a very conservative platform, but one of the areas of contrast, but one that's the Republican Party platform speaks so clearly to, is the issue of life.
Yes, indeed it does. And I think the element of contrast there is something, it is an opportunity for us to reach a lot of the suburban women and independent voters, because what the Democrats would do is basically strip the Hyde Amendment language. They would have government funding of elective abortions. They would allow late-term abortions. And Tony, we know that women and indeed all voters oppose government funding of abortion. They oppose late-term abortion. And that is why the heartbeat bill has been so popular. That is why people say, well, you know, okay, even if they're pro-abortion, they will say, well, maybe up to 20 weeks, but nothing after that. And this is one of those issues where science has been on our side. I have a granddaughter who is 2 weeks old. And of course, it was great anticipation waiting for her to come. And as soon as there was the sonogram and we knew that this baby was a girl, then deciding what to name her, planning the nursery, deciding how we were going to bring her into our family, all of that excitement. So science works with us on this issue.
The party platform also speaks to the issue of Planned Parenthood, the
Yes.
use of fetal tissue, and of course you know quite a bit about that as you headed up a special congressional commission panel when you were in the House on Planned Parenthood and the trafficking in baby body parts.
That's exactly right. I chaired that select committee in 2015 and 2016, and we looked at what had happened with these business arrangements, as Planned Parenthood termed them, between their clinics and these third-party entities that had actually set up websites and were selling baby body parts. And you could go online and you could click that you needed a 14-week scalp or toes or tongue or whatever. It was just one of the most atrocious things I have ever seen in my life, and very hard to go through this. But Tony, we sent 15 criminal referrals to DOJ. Planned Parenthood stopped a lot of these business arrangements, as they term them. But here's the thing. The Democrats would embolden organizations like Planned Parenthood and other big abortion business entities. And what we seek to do is to redirect those funds so that they actually go to women's health and do not go to any entity that is providing abortion services.
And much of that is stated in the party platform, where the Republicans want to defund Planned Parenthood and entities like that. where the Democrats want to provide even additional funding to that. One of the other big issues in the party platform, Mike Johnson, is the issue of religious freedom.
Exactly right. We are boldly proclaiming the importance not only of the sanctity of every single human life, but also religious freedom. And we know that that essential liberty is listed and acknowledged in the Declaration of Independence as an inalienable right. In the Constitution, we refer to religious liberty as our first freedom because it's listed first in the Bill of Rights. The founders did that on purpose. And we preserve the importance of that in the Republican Party platform. We have all the way throughout our history, and we certainly do it in the current platforms now. And it's a stark contrast because while a lot of the Democrats will give lip service to religious liberty, we know that they define it very differently, and that's the key. To us, it's not just the right to worship. It's to the founders, it wasn't just the right to worship. It's the right to live out your faith, you know, not just something you do on Sunday morning, but something you do 7 days a week. And if it truly
even
is
as a member of Congress.
Yes.
As a member of Congress, that's right.
That is very true.
And some of us still practice that, don't we?
Yes, we do. And you know, we have to remember too that this is why people got on a ship and crossed an ocean.
That's right.
400
This
years
very
ago this
reason.
year.
That's
Yes.
exactly right.
That's right.
And we're 244 years into this experiment in self-governance, and this is one of the principal ideas that animated the American Revolution and sustains us till today, and we can't lose that because we know from experience and from history, when religious freedom is taken away from a people, their political freedom soon follows. That's the Marxist, socialist, communists, that's what they do first, is they silence and censor believers. Christians in particular, because they know those are the people who will stand up and say, wait a minute, our rights don't derive from the government, they derive from God himself, and so we have a right to preserve them. So the platform articulates that in beautiful language and explains the importance of this, the ability, the freedom that we have to live out our faith. And it goes a step further and says that no one should be discriminated against for doing that, for living out their faith. Individuals and nonprofits and entities, and that's a really, really important thing for us to jealously guard today, just like our previous generations did.
Well, it starts with the recognition of God. And you remember 2012, there was a big fiasco at the Democratic convention in Charlotte,
Right.
where they voted God out of the platform. And he did make his way in a little bit in the party platform, the Democratic Party platform, God-given potential. That's the only recognition of God, where the Republican platform mentions God over 15 times.
Well, and Tony, it's ubiquitous throughout the foundational principles articulated in the platform as well. And remember, we have colleagues in the Congress on the other side of the aisle that in this Congress, when they took over the majority in the House, for example, they intentionally tried to remove God from the oaths that witnesses take who testify before Congress. It was a deliberate intentional act on their part, and we had some fights in committee about that, preserving that tradition. And so make no mistake about it, I mean, a growing majority within that party would like to just completely whitewash that part of our history, but it's deeply embedded in who we are as a people.
Which is so dangerous because you see that secular viewpoint really permeating much of what the Democrat-controlled House
Yes.
is trying to do.
So Senator Blackburn, does it really matter what the party platform says?
Oh, absolutely it does. And when I was a party chairman, one of the things we would do as I was recruiting candidates was to talk about our platform. And it helps to define what you believe, not only for the presidential ticket and that administration, but up and down the ballot, your local, state, and federal candidates. This is who we are. This is what we believe. These are the values on which we're going to stand, and these are the principles that we are going to hold fast to.
Mike Johnson, the 2016 party platform for the Republicans was advanced to 2020, but I know that you've combed through it. I was a part of drafting that one as well. Has this administration pursued the principles in that Republican Party platform and accomplished many of the things that were in it?
In a remarkable fashion. I mean, we make the point that I came in with President Trump and took office in January 2017, and What a
He
run
came
it's
in office
been.
with you?
He came in office with me.
Oh, okay.
You brought him in.
Yes,
The coattails.
We all came to Washington at the same time, and he committed to those principles. I mean, the core principles of the party that have defined who we are as a party, our priorities. You talk about individual freedom and limited government and the rule of law and, you know, peace through strength, rebuilding the military, free markets and fiscal responsibility and human dignity, the sanctity of every human life. I mean, these are the things that drive us. And we say these are Republican principles, but they're first quintessential American principles, and they're grounded in timeless, eternal principle, and that's what we're advancing. And you can say anything you want about President Trump and the way he tweets and all that. It is beyond refute that his record of accomplishment on these issues that define who we are as a people, as you said,
Right.
is unmatched. I mean, you know, I'm a Reagan Republican. I grew up in the '80s. I mean, he's the gold standard for me. But Donald Trump has accomplished more on some of these issues than Ronald Reagan. It's an amazing track record, and he deserves another 4 years to keep doing it, and we're all on board for that.
Senator Blackburn, final question here. When you look at the comparison between these two party platforms, what's at stake in this election?
Oh my goodness. You look at religious liberty and that first principle and losing that. You look at the loss of free speech and look at what the cancel culture is doing now.
Yes.
If you dare to challenge them on anything, they will shut you down. And these are things that we would lose. Second Amendment rights. They have said their 100-day agenda, socialized medicine, the Green New Deal, felons voting from prison, 16-year-olds voting, D.C. statehood, followed by Puerto Rico statehood, abolishing the Electoral College, expanding the Supreme Court. These are the things that are at stake. And when you look at our platform versus their platform, the question that your viewers should ask is, am I going to be more free
Right.
under a Republican platform? And when you look at the Democrats, do I want to give up my rights
Yeah.
to the government to then have the government determine what they'll give back to me?
Congressman Mike Johnson, final word to voters?
I would just say that this is not your grandfather's Democrat Party. It's dramatically different. If we rewound 40, 50 years ago, there's really not much distinction between the two platforms, but now it is a wide chasm. These are two very dramatically different visions for America. And if you believe in these time-honored principles, you really have no choice. You've got to go with the policies and the platform that stand with what you believe.
Senator Marsha Blackburn, Congressman Mike Johnson, thank you for being with us.
Absolutely, thank you.
And folks, let me encourage you to take the challenge to pray, vote, and stand.